But in today's dollars, could it get to $100 million or $1 billion per Bitcoin? Yeah, of course it could, because they're going to have to print that much currency. We're at the exponential part of the debt curve. And Max Kaiser always says that, right? Bitcoin is designed to go up in purchasing power. It's mathematically designed because it's perfectly finite. We have different fights going on with, core versus knots and all these different things. But one of the biggest threats is the frog in the boiling pot. We have it with fiat. Most people don't know fiat, the fiat system and how it works. They're the frog. We're all the frog in the boiling pot. How does a fish know he's wet if he's grown up in the water his whole life? Bad things happening, like civil unrest. Yes. Is that part of it? Yeah. But it's also going to be massive entities that we all know and love that have trust. They're going to blow themselves up. We need to get to, maybe 10 million, 20, 50 million of true, authentic, freedom-seeking, Bitcoiners that actually get it and understand the system change and the pain and then the reward we need to go through. We're rationalizing human beings. Most people will not accept truth on face. It's very hard. It's not easy.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for being on. A pleasure to talking with you.
Robin, thank you so much for having me on. Love your pod. It's an honor to be on here. Thank you, sir.
That's great, man. I met you in Vegas, and now we met with a mutual friend again, Touchpoint, and I was like, I have to have you on. You're a great guy. But for the few people that don't know you and don't know that you're a great guy like me, give the few people a little bit of a background of who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Oh boy, I was telling you offline. Obviously, 15 years ago, as a kid graduating, playing hockey at Michigan State University, had an incredible career, just played all over the world, kind of traversed around where your stomping grounds a bit and played international tournaments and played for the US, in the United States national team, under 17 team, under 18 team, won a world championship there, won a national championship at Michigan State, and played in the professionally for a couple of years, and started getting hurt really 18 to 24. It's the only time I got hurt in my life was the years that it mattered. God had a different plan for me, and that around that time was when the great financial crash was happening, and 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, and all those years I was leaving school and then in the minors, and it just became very obvious that and I was always questioning teachers growing up and things of that nature, and fighting with them and arguing with people about politics and when are we going to make money and just different stuff like that, and it became very clear. So I happened to be in the grocery store one day and just had a little book, whispering, a little book whispering to me, and it was ironically a Donald Trump book. But it was with Robert Kiyosaki, and it was Why We Want You to Be Rich. And it was like $3 in the bargain bin. And I picked it up and just blew my mind wide open, just changed my life forever. And it was all about, your money making money for you, using, intelligent leverage, we'll call it, using, the money is no longer money. It's currency now after 1971, just all these different dynamics. And it just totally, I got mad. I was also very hopeful because you kind of found the answer in a way. But I also very mad at just why had no one told me this. And it was just something I had been searching for and just didn't have the right direction necessarily, or didn't find the right thing until then. And so it led me to reading Creature from Jekyll Island and their other books, and more of Robert Kiyosaki's books, and reading about monetary history led me to Mike Maloney, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver. So I really got into real estate and gold and silver as I was leaving hockey in 2011, 2012, did that for 10 years. I was obviously in that world. So I was finding Bitcoin as it would be, obviously in 2015, or I don't know, probably 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. I don't even know when I heard about Bitcoin the first time. Don't know how I didn't hear about it earlier, since I was already in that world studying things so much. But, I finally really grokked it, I would say probably 2017, 2018. That's when I really started buying much more, and just kind of like, okay, I'm going all in on this thing. This is the answer to political things. Because for a long time I realized, because I was so political as a kid, and then seeing what happened in 08, seeing what happened in 2012 here in America, it was very obvious that there were two different, fake sides. It was not red versus blue, it was a state versus you. And it was just controlled opposition. It was, people just doing weird things and not what the constituents, the voters wanted them to do. And for a long story short, so it just became very obvious that we were going the wrong direction. We're leaving freedom. We're leaving sovereignty. We're leaving decentralization. We're so federalized. We're so centralized into one place in Washington, D.C. And obviously all the governments of the world have done that. So it just became very obvious that we're anything but what the founding fathers of America had talked about, which the founding fathers were people from all over the world, really. I mean, obviously a lot of them are from Northern Europe or, European settlers. And they wrote about all the governments of the world. They studied all the governments of the world for thousands of years. So it wasn't like some happenstance, like, oh, we just had a dream one day and we woke up and wrote these documents, or had, hey, we're going grabbing our muskets and going fighting for this. It was something that they thought about and talked about and then fought a war about. And so that was how I grew up. My dad was that way. That was ingrained in me, reading those documents, just over and over again throughout the year. So it was, again, like I'd fight with school because they didn't teach you a lot of those things. And it was already 30 years ago becoming very different, your schooling here in America. So government run schooling. So that's where Bitcoin, I finally realized Bitcoin, there's that money layer is what's controlling, obviously, the political layer. And so that's where it became very obvious. Hey, Bitcoin's the only thing that I've seen. Again, all of us could be wrong. I mean, there's anything in life that could happen. I mean, an asteroid could hit the earth and we all get taken out. And then, I don't know, Bitcoin doesn't win, I guess. I don't know. Sure. But it was the only thing where it's like, well, we know all these systems have failed, all of them. So why would we keep doing the same thing? But we have this thing right here, Bitcoin, that quenches the thirst, I guess, for sound money. It does the things that gold can't do. Final settlement across space, hold your time and energy across, millennia. All these things that gold just had a hard time doing. The time over a millennia, gold has done that for the most part. But final settlement can't do that. Get centralized. People get scared to hold it. So then, they obviously there's claim checks, and then we have dollars and paper currency as claim checks and IOUs on the gold. So we have thousands of years of history telling us that gold and silver were great in localized, maybe very free banking, very local, small economies, but it doesn't work in a huge national global world. So Bitcoin really checks those last couple of boxes that gold never could, and just physically can't. So that's where it became hey, I'm so sick of fighting red versus blue. Like, why wouldn't we go this direction? It became very easy. I remember Pierre Rochard talking before, like, I found it in 2012. And I was like, oh, then this next year is going to be amazing. Like, everyone's going to get this. It's going to solve all of our problems. And he's like, yeah, cutscene. It's like, 13 years later and nothing's changed. So long story long, it's the whole thing, I think, to me is that I've kind of resigned myself back to coming full circle. You kind of go through this journey, a gauntlet. Like, Bitcoiners don't just become Bitcoiners like overnight. They're not like, oh, I'm number go up boy. Like, that's the crypto crowd. The crypto crowd thinks in fiat terms. They think in number go up terms, whatever. That might get people into Bitcoin, but the real ones, the truth seekers, stay for the freedom. And they're the ones that are the revolutionaries, the ones grabbing the musket, so to speak, and saying, I'm going out there, the 3%. So I'm really stuck on this fact that the 3% really fought the Revolutionary War here in America, and the ones that dragged everyone across the finish line. And there was more people that were maybe before supported it, but only a couple percent dragged everyone, physically said, I'm sick of this. I'm not doing this anymore. And most of us just sit around and wait for things to happen to us in life. And there's a couple percent of people that say, no, we're not doing this. And those are the change makers in life. Those are the people that say, we're not doing this. I'm grabbing this thing, we're going, and I'm dragging the rest of society with me. And I'm really resigned to the fact that 3 being one of those, natural law, maybe divine numbers. And so you have this 3% we need to get to in order to move the rest of humanity across the finish line. Because in America, at least, you have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That was, again, the couple percent of people gave the other 97% those rights. The other 97% wouldn't have those rights if it wasn't for those couple percent. So, the cavalry's not coming. There's not going to be, tens and hundreds of millions of people necessarily, or billions of people just following you. We need to get to, maybe 10 million, 20, 50 million of true, authentic, freedom seeking, Bitcoiners that actually get it and understand the system change and the pain and then the reward we need to go through. And so that's, some of my story, I guess, kind of wrapped into why I'm hopeful about Bitcoin, because it's the only chance other than, Christ coming back to earth, and you have the deity come and, say, hey, I'm the truth, and I'm taking you all with me. I mean, until that happens, there's no other human answer, secular answer on earth I have ever seen. When you go through all of this, natural law, divine law, first principles, thermodynamic law, like all these things, when you go through all of these critical thinking pieces, it's the only logical conclusion you can come to at that point. Unfortunately, we don't live in a logical world. We live in a very emotional world, which leads into some of the threats I even was thinking about earlier when you messaged me of, Seyr has talked about this, like one of the biggest threats, and we have different fights going on with, core versus knots and all these different things. But one of the biggest threats is the frog in the boiling pot. We have it with fiat. Most people don't know fiat, the fiat system and how it works. They're the frog. We're all the frog in the boiling pot. How does a fish know he's wet if he's grown up in the water his whole life? Well, here we go again with Bitcoin. You have to be careful because 16 years in, yeah, you have a lot of people that haven't gone through this fight now. And we have young kids, you're going to have kids someday. I have 4 young kids. They might grow up knowing, hey, Bitcoin's the thing, but will they know the properties? Will they know the reason Bitcoin is so important? And unless you've gone through those fights, it is hard at times to understand the importance of it, just like the principles that the Constitution of the Bill of Rights has. A lot of people in America have forgotten that the beauty of that, what gave them this prosperity. And it's those laws, those morals, or values, those ethics, whatever you want to call them, that give you that ability to then have a prosperous world. You're not just entitled to them. You don't just wake up and those are earned. They're not given. So I think that to me is the big thing. Like Seyr has said, if people lose the wantingness or they lose the lure for sound money, they don't understand it, or again, the frog in the boiling pot of you just kind of get psyoped over time. You know what? All the Bitcoin centralized in a few honeypots, not that big of a deal. Come on, guys. It's not that big of a deal. Most people won't actually self-custody their Bitcoin. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But yeah, like we have to keep educating, because we need a couple % of ardent, irate minority to continually push that line and really snap society back towards the truth. Because again, most people will not, we're rationalizing human beings. Most people will not accept truth on face. It's very hard. It's not easy. I don't necessarily understand it. I try to do everything in my power to understand when I'm rationalizing things or I'm not accepting truth to the degree that I should be. So that to me, I think is why I'm so hopeful. And because I see that it gives us at least the human chance here on Earth to actually right the ship, go to a type 1 society and move on from the thousands of years of, the chaos I guess we've had.
Man, there was a lot in there. I love that. The frog analogy was amazing, because I do have this thing, and you mentioned it in the beginning where you said like 2012, you think like, it will take like 1-2 years and we all get it, and then cut to 13 years and you're like, oh, still nobody gets Bitcoin. I mean, of course, the conferences got bigger.
Right.
We now have, as you mentioned, Donald Trump, the US president, at least talking about Bitcoin. We can debate how much he understands it, but at least he talks about it. He's on conferences and all of that. So there has been major developments. But then again, you go out on the streets, ask 100 people, what is the difficulty adjustment? And you're very lucky if you get one good answer of that. And so it's like, because we are emotional creatures, because we are not logical creatures, because we are not AI, it takes actually a long time to orange pill the world. And from like getting to 0 to 100, it's like a long freaking time. And we all have this like fear of missing out, of like, I got Bitcoin, now I have to get as many as possible. I have to like keep stacking, and how many do I have to get? And then it's like, oh yeah, like calm down. The world probably won't get it tomorrow. And you probably have some time to stack till Apple and Google buys Bitcoin. It probably will take some time till this actually happens. But as you said, this frog example, like I actually looked at that once, and there's a lot of frog examples where the frog actually jumps out. Like it's funny, because I think if you turn up the heat too much, and like not the frog actually, but like the people with inflation and pain from the fiat currency, I do think people will jump out. Like people are not that stupid. They might be blind or arrogant or ignorant to the solution of Bitcoin. But I turn up mainstream news every day for like 5-10 minutes to see what's kind of the mainstream narrative right now. And the mainstream narrative is we have to fight inflation. I have never seen that. I've never seen the mainstream narrative being so focused on that we have to fight inflation. The solutions are outrageously bad, what they're proposing. We have to do rent control. Like, oh shit, like that will not do anything. But at least they're talking about the problem that Bitcoiners are yelling about since, 16 years now?
Mm-hmm.
With all that in mind, I have a very simple question in mind. Like, how fast do you think the frog will get to actually jump out of the board, and how do you think he will get it? Is it like, do you foresee a major catastrophe where like all of a sudden like, oh fuck, like we really have to get out of that? Or is it just like gradually and then we're hitting obviously like nobody really knows, but this is just a question of like, I know we will get to Bitcoin. I just have a hard time understanding how the heck we will get there if nobody seems to still get it, even though inflation is a real big problem.
Well, this is a question of our time, right, Robin? I mean, this is a thing I go back and forth on more than anything. And, my dad always said the pain is a good teacher. And for some reason, humans, again, we're rationalizing creatures. We, for good reason, we probably don't just jerk around and make decisions as a society very quickly, because that'd be very jarring for a civilization, or especially a global civilization now. So you can imagine like the world operating as an entrepreneur. Like, can you imagine if 8 million people were like, I'm doing this and then I'm doing that? Like, that would be absolute insanity, right? So most people move very slowly. Society moves very slowly. Again, for good reason. In saying that, I do think that it's going to be black swan events. I think more of this is going to happen. I think I've said probably since I was in high school, there's going to be probably a civil war at some point. I do think, though, there's been a civil war and depression really here in America. Maybe across the world. I know America better, but like everyone knows the website WTF happened in 1971. I would actually, my opinion is that is the depression. Like the last 50 years are the depression. A lot of middle class have lost their like wealth just through inflation. Obviously, the poor have got really squeezed. The wealth gap has widened, and the biggest factor to me, because some of the technology has masked a lot of that, right? Like they mentioned the computer, and like cars have gotten better. So a lot of people, they can't see it. Right? Going back to the frog in the boiling pot. But I think that the pain part has to come for whatever reason, just to reset society. And it's not the end of the world. Obviously, like it's not that it's a bad thing. Like, yes, are people going to get hurt? Yeah. I mean, like, but we all die someday. Like, hate to break it to everybody, but like everyone, we're all terminal. Like everyone's, it just, that's what happens. And for some reason, humans just, they have a hard time, grasping that. But it's very real to understand that and get right with yourself in that sense, because, pain is a good teacher. And I do think that there are going to be things, because this is like the fight that it is, right? Like you have like the guys that say, and gals, there's, status number go up people. And then there's like the cypherpunk crowd, and then there's different crowds of factions. And I don't know, like you just said, I don't know, how do you square the circle of like, are we just little elves like up in the North Pole, and we're just like building on Bitcoin, and then like we show up like 15 years from now and say, hey guys, we've got a new system, here it is, like we're just unveiling it, and then just boom, the iceberg flips, and then here we go, new system. I don't think that's how it happens. Like I think it probably does happen this way, where governments, if we, like Jeff Booth says, if it stays decentralized and secure, and we keep educating about it, and there's people out there like this, a couple % of people in what you're doing, right, and educating people, then hopefully there's always going to be that flicker of light that keeps people centered and to say, hey, here's what it's supposed to be. I know these people, the people that we don't want to have Bitcoin, whatever it is, ETFs, governments, big corporations, you name it. However, here's the truth. Here's the light right here. And as long as that doesn't go out somewhere in the world, then I think we're good. Like, then I think we're going to be fine. And it's going to, like you said, it'll happen over time. I just don't know how do you Trojan horse and defund the corrupt, government legacy, fiat monetary system, debt-based system, unless you get the Trojan horse inside the gates. If we're just building at the North Pole outside the gates the whole time, then we show up at the gates and say, hey guys, let us in. I think we need to use all this. I don't know. Because again, if we're going to try to educate every last human being, that might take 100 years, 500 years, 50 years, 10 years. I don't know. But at the same time, I'm of the opinion, that's where I think I have a hard time with it. The average person just not built to understand what's going on, unfortunately. Like it's a pipe dream I just, like, it goes back to the Pierre Rochard quote. Like if people 16 years in, with all the technology and communication we have now, I feel like we'd have a lot more people that would really grok Bitcoin and be Bitcoiners at this point. With, if this was 200, 500 years ago, like I get Bitcoin not spreading that quickly, but I mean, at this point, like I'm kind of questioning, if you don't understand Bitcoin or you don't have a really good story about Bitcoin, then where you been? And so that just kind of tells you a little bit of where we're headed, that it's going to be a grind, and don't expect it to be so easy. Like, oh, the US is going to buy Bitcoin and then all of our dreams are going to come true. Like that's not how it's going to happen. It's going to happen probably through, look at one of the greatest orange pillars of all time was probably Justin Trudeau, right? And then the Dutch, farmers, like you go through these different events, and these guys are doing things that take sovereignty away, or what happened in Australia. Your people are getting welded into their homes. That's what wakes people up, unfortunately, at the end of the day. And again, number go up. So those two things, fear and greed, are the things that, again, we have to admit, those are the things that get the number to go up. All this education in the interim, the things that, these podcasts, these are the things like in between those events to like keep people on the straight and narrow, to like educate, obviously like keep the intelligence high, to be there when people are ready to find it, stuff like that. And obviously it orange pills people there, but it's not the magnitude of what these black swan, like good and bad black swan events are, whether it's price going up or something like that. And you made me think of as well, going back to the very first thing you kind of asked, is how, I think it was Howard Dean, like 20 years ago, it was in the 2000s, said, basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was like, yeah, we can't tax people too much. This was like on a national news show. And he was like, we can't tax people too much because then they'll kind of figure out, we have to give them just enough socialism so that way they don't wake up, they don't jump out of the pot, in essence. That's why it made me think of this. And it's one of those things where there are times when the politicians will let the cat out of the bag. There's another time, like 5 years later, when Obama's health guy, I forget who it was, his health czar that created the Obamacare law here in America. He was like, yeah, lack of transparency is a great political tool. And he's literally on camera. It's still on YouTube. You can find it. There's 2-minute clips of him in a conference saying this, admitting this to everybody and saying, yeah, lack of transparency, great political tool. Like the American people are too stupid to figure out that they needed this. So we needed to basically lie to them and just jam it down their throat, and in order for the best of them. And you just kind of look back and that, like, if you have this out there and people still don't wake up and realize there's a game being played on them, and you are just a pawn, just a digit, a statistic in these people's world and how they operate, I don't know what else to tell you. Like that kind of stuff, it lights my brain on fire, and has since I was a child. But the average person, again, been so sedated and so their will's been broken so much, which is by design. You read a lot of the stuff from 100 years ago, 150 years ago, Karl Marx, different writings, different stuff like that. A lot of the goal was to break the will of capitalism, break the will of people that were in capitalism, and to destroy the family unit and things of that nature. So we're living through the end game of a lot of what has happened there. And then you go back to the last thing I'll say about it is just that you go back to, again, the quiet part out loud. I think it was 1943 or 1944. It was like American Affairs, some type of magazine here in America, that wrote out the different bullet points about. It was Beardsley Rummel, I think, who was like the Fed head of New York, and he literally wrote an article that said taxes for revenue are obsolete, and they wrote like 4 bullet points in the article of like what taxes were for, and it was like, we do it to coerce people to do what we want them to do, to redistribute wealth to people we want, blah, 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 whatever. Like it is right there, black and white. So you have video of people saying it, recently you've got, 70 years ago, you have people talking about it in print. So at the end of the day, like if people have ears to hear and eyes to see, they will find the truth. But at the end of the day, the education is there. All of it's there. I do think that'll be good and bad. It'll be Bitcoin ripping people's faces off, number go up on the plus side. And then on the negative side, yeah, there's going to be bad things happen. Obviously, some stuff in America just in the last week here. There's numerous events that have just happened that people still don't get it. They don't understand how to protect themselves. They don't understand. They keep doing that, beating their head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over again, thinking they're going to get different results. We do it everywhere. With protecting schools, we do it thinking if we take the shooters, trying to think of the best way to say it. If we take the actual weapons out of school, that it's going to make things safer. We tried this for 30 years and it's only made things more unsafe. We always are like doing opposite what feels good at the time, instead of doing the right thing, the short-term pain for the long-term gain. So anyway, I could wax poetic for hours about some of these things, but I think that to me, it's we're going to have these events that are going to happen on the plus and negative side that are going to jar people out of their stupor.
That's fascinating, and it's also, it makes me a lot to think about, where you like how will people actually look back at this Bitcoin revolution, as like you have so many different revolutions in the history, and people look back and what they thought it is at the time, and now with more information, what we actually we now think it was and what it actually was. So there's a lot of different aspects of Bitcoin, because I think without the financial freedom, you cannot have any other freedom. I mean, it's very important to have freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and all of those things. But at the very center is financial freedom. I mean, there are people that argue that financial freedom is freedom of speech, because transferring in value is also kind of a communication style. But this this money part, this financial freedom part is, in my opinion, the most important one. This is the fundamental layer where then everything else comes from that. And then it's like, okay, we have that broken system. We have that system that just doesn't work as it is right now. How do you infiltrate that? And I love that one, because if you think about from first principles, how do you get a new system in this old system? You want to make it as shiny as possible, so everyone wants to have it. Like, it has to be like chocolate. Like no kid can say no to chocolate. And then it also cannot start to, I don't know, hard to frame, but like, let's say you want to poison a whole city. You want to pack it in chocolate and you want to make that poison work, not directly, but like after like some years and decades where it's already too late and everyone had that chocolate. And I mean, that's a negative framing, and Bitcoin is something positive. So it's poisons basically the bad people. But that's basically how Bitcoin works. Now Wall Street is coming in and people saying like, oh, Bitcoin is captured. Bitcoin is now controlled by Larry Fink and all of that thing. I went at the Amsterdam conference last year. I went into buy falafel, and the guy asked me like, oh, what do you do here? And I'm like, oh, I'm at a Bitcoin conference. He's like, oh, but Bitcoin has been now bought by BlackRock, right? Like, it's owned now by BlackRock. And I'm like, there's nobody can, like, everyone can own Bitcoin, but parts of it are not, like, it's not a company. And like, he was like, wait, it's not a company. Like, he was 100% of the opinion that Bitcoin is a company that just was acquired by BlackRock. And so we have a lot of this thinking of Bitcoin is now captured by institutional by institutions and by those elites that that the cypherpunks were very against it. And the thing that needs to happen is we are right at the heart of that, and we are infiltrating that. Like, it's not that Wall Street is infiltrating it in Bitcoin. We are infiltrating in Wall Street. The only thing I think we have to make sure that Bitcoin is freedom coin and not bank coin. So that's why I'm very big on like self-custody. That's why I'm very big on running your own node. All of those things you have to do. I would even encourage people to like start up some miners and just to do individual things, but everyone to do its own and do however much you can do. But as long, and I always come back to Jeff Booth, as you also said yourself, as long as it's decentralized and secure, and it's not a bank coin that everyone just holds on a second layer, this thing will rip. We will have a great future ahead, and that's why I love being just in this revolution, because it's the first war where you actually benefit from being part of the revolution. Like, if you think back of any revolution, like, you usually suffered a lot in a revolution. The only thing that you suffer from is that people will call you crazy. Like, and that's like, you can deal with that. Because you will get freaking wealthy in doing that for over a long period of time. It was just a random rant, not really a question.
No, really quick. I mean, like, again, people always say like, well, you're just going to sit there and buy Bitcoin and do nothing. It's like, there's literally nothing more morally sound that you can do than buying Bitcoin and selling dollars and fiat currency, any fiat currency, and selling it and to defund this corrupt, debt-based, evil monetary system that we're in. I mean, even look at bonds. I mean, like, a government bond the root word is bondage. You know, it's a root word from bondage. You know, like, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, what better way to enslave another person's, people in their country than to buy their bonds and then force them to get on the rat wheel and pay you back? I mean, the governments don't make money. I think about how crazy that is. Governments don't make money, and yet they have to pay you that principal back somehow, and interest on top of that. Where are they getting that from? You are literally confirming, yes, me and my children and my grandchildren need to be in slavery in the future, get taxed on this rat wheel in order to give it back to the government to pay these things off in the future. It's the most insane system I couldn't think. I mean, it's like, I talked about this with someone the other day. I don't know who it was, but like, Genghis Khan used to, come through and just destroy villages and take everyone out and do whatever he wanted, right? And that was very easy to see because it was physical and it was right in your face. Now they've found a much easier way to do that. Like, it's a much easier, like you said, they don't have to get hurt. The people at the top running everything, they don't need to. There's nothing I need to do now. And it's ephemeral, it's invisible, it's insidious. Inflation, currency printing, steals everything they need without the negative consequences for them. We just get the negative consequences. So again, that's the life we choose to live. And once you opt out of that and say, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore, that you used to have to grab the musket. Now all you have to do is buy Bitcoin, sell your dollars, put it in self-custody, run a node, all for a couple $100 of doing that. And you are running the revolution with all the upside. And again, not a lot of downside.
And it's also funny when I look at movies and series, because you brought up the point that government doesn't do anything, like they don't earn money directly. When I look at movies and series where there's like mafias and like drug lords, and the government also like, oh, the government like. Where's the difference between a mafia and a government? Like, of course, they're like, I know the differences, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like, what is the hard difference? Because we have to, and there's even like things like the, how's it called? The death penalty, which is, I think, a proof of governments being mafia. And this is just like, I do think there has to be probably some sort of institutions that has some sort of regulatory force when people come together. Like for me, democracy and government is or politics in general is the place where we decide on how we live together. I just think because of the fiat system and central banks, this is where all the problems were introduced. And this is where a lot of the things have gone wrong. I mean, in Bitcoin, there's a broad spectrum of people that think all government institutions should be completely vanished and like it should be completely free. And then on the whole other side, I even found a lot of socialist or almost communist Bitcoiners. They exist, not a lot of them. But it's interesting. When you think about how do you actually think the political system will change when we're on a Bitcoin system? And basically, like the situation is there's no longer a central bank and there's no longer like the ability to print fiat money. And even if there is only a little bit, because there's such a big alternative that every time they print a little bit more, their fiat currencies completely gets devalued and they have to be very careful. How do you think such a system where financial responsibility is forced onto everyone, not just the plebs?
Yeah, I think that's a very real thing that's coming our way. And I think this goes back to the Trojan horse thing. And it's how do you defund them? That sly roundabout way, obviously. And I think what ends up happening is that you have a lot of people that start grokking Bitcoin. They start understanding that are politicians, or, you have a lot of people that you would call it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. Like you'd have Bitcoiners that are like, yeah, I'm going into government. Like they're independently wealthy, like very wealthy or something like that. Again, like love Trump, who knows? But I mean, at least perception wise, again, we don't know the truth, but perception wise, he's not, actually, I'm going to go that route. I'm not going to go that route because I know what people will think either way. It doesn't even matter. You don't win even going that route. So we're not going to go that route. But what happens is if you're independently wealthy and you're like, no, I don't care. I live in a citadel. I've got my thing. And you were like, you don't care. I mean, you're basically libertarian. Like you have nothing to do with the system, or anarchist or whatever. And you go in to defund the system. So you're going to have people that twofold. You're going to have people that have independent wealth that are Bitcoiners and they go into politics, and actually go start defunding the system in essence. And then you're going to have people that are in government over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And then I guess the third thing is the demographic shift. Again, the silent generation and the boomers are going to sunset here over the next 10 years, 15, 20 years. They will be gone from the purview of society and not leading things anymore. So these old legacy systems will collapse regardless. I mean, whether we like it or not, it doesn't even matter. They will collapse, and that shift will be very seismic. And so that's where, whether it's the number of houses just flooding onto the market, whatever it is, like you have the older generations owning so much of it, that's going to flood on the market because the younger generation can't afford it. They don't know how to work on them. They don't want them. It goes back to the 2030. You'll rent everything and be happy. I mean, there is something to that. Like, it's not that these people are dumb, like the WHO or WEF or something like that. Like they see what's coming as well, and they're designing a lot of the future, and that's why it's so scary at times. Why you have to be so diligent. But coming back really quick, I think it's twofold. Like you're going to have, like I said, independent wealth come in, but you're also going to have people inside a government like a Cynthia Loomis, type of thing, or, 10 of them and then 50 of them and whatever. And then you're going to have more people be orange pilled and start realizing like, oh crap. And again, a lot of this goes back to humility. Bitcoin is a humility test. I mean, it's really it's not an IQ test. It's a humility test. And when you start understanding deflation, we've talked about Jeff Booth a couple of times, you start understanding that most of what I do in life is kind of useless. Robin and I, we won't have our podcast shows 10 years from now. Like no one's going to need a Bitcoin podcast, that's not, so there's a time and place for everything. It's not like now, like you don't have guys in every corner doing horseshoes, that's not, it's just like life changes, society changes, and that deflation, once we can start capturing it through Bitcoin, a neutral money, and that can start to be dispersed throughout society, and energy costs come down, all these things come down, just because, hey, my job got taken by this X thing, robot or AI, that doesn't mean, oh, my life's over because I have Bitcoin and I've been getting wealthier. Oh, and the costs keep coming down of everything. So if I'm out of job for a month or a couple months, I don't need government welfare. I don't need the UBI. I don't need these ridiculous things because I have this thing over here that life has now become very cheap, if not free in many cases, in many different areas of my life. And I hold Bitcoin. So even if I'm out of a job, that's, it is what it is. And then you're going to have these people redistributing throughout society. Again, there's too many lawyers. We mentioned WTF happened in 1971. I kind of went on a tangent from that, obviously, but the depression I was talking about, there's an explosion of lawyers, explosion of hospital administrators, explosion of divorces, explosion of children out of wedlock, thing after thing after thing piling up, which has caused this break in the timeline, the space-time continuum for any Back to the Future fans, where we've created this alternate reality and gone off haywire away from the truth. And we have this world now where we're starting to come back to that, and Bitcoin is starting to realign that. And people like the ones listening to this are understanding that, but most of society just isn't there. So again, there's so many angles we could take with this, but I do think that it's going to start from those two factors, the people coming in from the outside and saying, no, we're defunding this system. I'm not doing this anymore. And then just naturally people becoming Bitcoiners, understanding Bitcoin over time, and the demographic shift of people leaving the older generation. And again, that all coincides together to the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, where you have a radically different world because the younger generations won't take it anymore and they see the future. They will reshape it in their own eyes. And anyone that's left will be changed by Bitcoin, and you won't be able to ignore it. You will be ostracized 15 years from now if you're the one not grokking Bitcoin and trying to fight against it. At that point, it'll be like, whoa, like, what are you doing, man? Like, so anyway.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Robin Seyr podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you. 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition, beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin Seyr podcast. We have limited editions. We have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than type titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC-free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I think we will be those old grandpas telling the great grandkids how hard we fought for Bitcoin, and they should be more thankful for the freedoms with money that they now have, and they will take it for granted. That is the same way as a lot of grandpas are now talking about fighting for the freedom. And I think we have it a lot better than our grandfathers. Like a lot.
Way better.
And I think and I hope that our great kids also will have it a lot better than we have it. So this is why I always say, like, what a time to be alive to actually witness this whole thing and do this. One thing I'm curious, because I ask you and I ask most of my guests, like, oh, like, is there any topic list that you really want to get to, or like something that you want to have in the podcast? And you brought up something with Mona Lisa, and literally in almost now 600 episodes, we never talked about Mona Lisa, which is kind of funny because I think there's some great connections and great comparisons in there. So how do you connect Bitcoin with the Mona Lisa?
Well, obviously, the Mona Lisa is one of the most coveted, art pieces, if not the most coveted of all time. And it's not that one Bitcoin, not all Bitcoin, but one Bitcoin will become the price. Because I think by estimates, it's somewhere between it's probably around $1 billion right now, currently, like the valuation or the insurance on it or something like that. And I think it was like 100 million in 1962 or something like that. So it's maybe at some point Bitcoin does become that, but I don't know if Bitcoin will ever become that nominal price in dollars, just because I think the system doesn't exist at that point. Like, you look at like the German hyperinflation, obviously, and what happened there, and eventually the system, like a top, it just like it blows apart, right? Like you're spinning too fast and just kind of like everything flies off. And so at some point the system rips apart and it just doesn't exist anymore. So that's where it's tough, because Bitcoiners have to live in this world of, and we'll get back to the Mona Lisa in a second, but we have to live in these two worlds, obviously, a fiat, like today's purchasing power, so people understand where we're going, what's happening. And also then it can also, at the same time, confuses people, because they're like, well, I thought that Bitcoin was money, and like, what if dollars don't exist? And it's like, it confuses people if you're not down the rabbit hole, obviously. But in today's dollars, yeah, could it get to $100 million or $1 billion per Bitcoin? Yeah, of course it could, because they're going to have to print that much currency. We're at the exponential part of the debt curve, not, the reason Bitcoin's going up so much in purchasing, again, you think 15 years ago, pizza day, it was 10 cents or, whatever, 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza or two. And you think about what it was to buy one Bitcoin then versus it's now, whatever, we'll say 100,000, 110, 120, 130,000. You think about how much the magnitude of that many dollars now, just compared to 15 years ago. And we're just now, in the debt in America was like, 5 to 10 trillion at the time. And now it's like almost 40 trillion. And that's in 10, 15 years. But do you think about where we're going? We're at that debt curve. And that's why earlier, Bitcoin is guaranteed to rip. And Max Kaiser always says that, right? Bitcoin is it's designed to go up in purchasing power. It's mathematically designed because it's perfectly finite. And that's a part that most people don't understand. Like, it's not, again, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and the governments of the world have to print endless amounts of currency. There's 900 trillion in global assets. There's going to be a quadrillion soon if there's not already. Well, eventually it's going to be 1.5 quadrillion. Then it's going to be 2 quadrillion. Then it's going to be 5 quadrillion. And it's probably going to be in somewhat short order. That's probably in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So that just goes to show you that when you start, meeting this all out, that Bitcoin's going to melt faces because it is the only thing that is finite that we have besides our time. But it's the marriage of time in digital scarcity and energy in Bitcoin. It's the only asset that we have that does that. So gold, land, all these different things have small inflation rates to them. We make more housing. We make more land out in Dubai. We're finding more gold. People are incentivized to do that because the price goes up. They put more supply out. They find more. And then the price comes back down a bit and kind of balances out. Bitcoin's the only thing that can't do that. And the beauty of, people, what about paper Bitcoin and price being suppressed? Well, that's great, but you're going to rip, the shorts faces off at some point. Bitcoin, that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is you have auditability every 10 minutes. You don't have that in any other asset. I can't go verify all these other things in the world at a second's notice. And every 10 minutes, TikTok next block, it doesn't matter. The Bitcoin's doing its thing and auditing the whole system. So at some point, someone sniffs out what's going on. Someone figures it out. Someone, puts a short squeeze on or whatever and blows up the people who are suppressing the price of Bitcoin or something like that. So you can do it in all these other asset classes, but you can't do it. And you can do it in the short term with Bitcoin. You cannot do it forever. And that's the thing that keeps resetting the system. So going back to us talking about black swans, education, what teaches people. Well, I think there's going to be some massive people, like there'll be civil unrest to a degree in many parts of the world. I think there's also going to be some massive like country blowups at some point. The JP Morgan Chases of the world, like banks, like massive banks that people watch like blow up because they think they can play games. They think they can play funny games, and they will blow themselves up. And people will learn very quickly. Like those things just ripples across the world where people are like, whoa. And then they're learning about Bitcoin. They're realizing, I can't F around all the time. So going back to this political thing of what starts training people, their mind, and reorienting their mind to truth. Well, it's going to be these events like that, not just, again, like these bad things happening, like it's civil unrest. Yes. Is that part of it? Yeah. But it's also going to be massive, massive entities that we all know and love that have trust. They're going to blow themselves up and they're going to expose themselves. The water's going to, rush out. We're going to see who's swimming naked. And there we go. So the Mona Lisa thing, going back to that quick, it's art obviously is, it's one of these things that I think, and I know you believe too, and many Bitcoiners, that art will have its renaissance, right? We're going to have this world where people are going back and building things with their hands, whether it's housing or, because we don't have any of that, skilled trade, skilled labor, but also art. Those things are art, the things we're building. Like, why do they build these, the pyramids, or why do they build, the Colosseum, or, the treasury and the Greek Pantheon or something like that? Like, why are these things so beautiful? Where you grew up, or, in the Slavic regions, or in Austria, like there's, like you go across Europe, like they built these things thousands of years ago. It's like, how do we not have this stuff today? And it's because you're not incentivized to think long-term and to actually go swing a hammer. You're just not, right? You're incentivized to go into financialization and to go arbitrage a system and create nothing, create more digits on a computer in order to get yourself ahead, but you're keeping the rest of society down. So again, the Mona Lisa thing is more like, it'll be more coveted. One Bitcoin will be more coveted than the Mona Lisa at some point. Again, could the price be more than one Bitcoin more than a Mona Lisa? Possibly. Is it $1 billion for Bitcoin? Possibly. I don't know if the system exists at that point, but people 100 years from now the only thing that keeps the Mona Lisa afloat though, is that I think art will be more heralded as well, even then, than it is now to a degree. So maybe that's what keeps the Mona Lisa up there and it keeps it at par to a degree. And just people want that as well. But what are people going to want 100 years from now more? Are they going to be looking at one Bitcoin when we know that'll be very, very rare for a family or, a dynasty to have one Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin? And so people are going to be looking for that and saying, wow, can you believe that person has one Bitcoin? Is it that or the Mona Lisa? Which will people, so that to me, I think is something that people need to wrap their heads around. And again, the other part of this is, the art, the real estate, the bonds, all these things, that asset premium will be, or the monetary premium will be sucked out of all these assets in the coming decades as people again say, hey, I can store this. Like you mentioned earlier, I can run my own node for couple $100 in a few minutes of setting this up. I can get a self custody. I can get a Passport, foundation wall, Passport core. I got this. I got my titanium seed plate. Boom, good to go. And I've got my wealth, and I can go anywhere in the universe. Or do I want to get this Mona Lisa and try to keep my wealth in that and try to travel the world with that? You can't. Do I want to travel the world with my house? No, these things have been made as banks because people can't save their fiat currency. So now you have this world where we have this thing you can store in, protect it, go anywhere in the world. And you don't have to store your monetary premium, your savings in bonds or in real estate or in art. So that monetary premium is going to start coming out. Maybe it's 450 trillion of the 900 trillion. It starts getting sucked out of all of it. And to a large extent, I think that you probably have to account, because Bitcoin's money, you have to account for all 900 trillion. And that's why you see like a Jeff Booth say it's going to be $43 million for Bitcoin, or 20 to $25 million of Bitcoin, because it's one half of every trade, $450 trillion. It's definitely one of those. And like, it is money. It's going to do it, but it's going to take some time. And this is what people are going to wake up to and realize, as they cannot just, go take most people don't have the Mona Lisa. You have to go see it. And again, they're going to take that monetary premium from all these different asset classes, and it's going to be sucked into Bitcoin.
I think to art will something similar happen to what will happen to companies and to maybe even like real estate. And as you come from real estate, I'm curious also like how you think about that. But I think with art, the really beautiful art, the Mona Lisas of the world, the thing where there's a lot of proof of work, and then that's like actually an art of work, a piece of art, those will become probably even more valuable in a Bitcoin world. But there's a whole bunch of fake art, and I'm talking about the banana. I'm talking about all those things where I'm like, this exists because of fiat.
Yes.
In a similar sense, I think companies, there are great profitable companies that do amazing work, that do amazing proof of work, that provide value in products and services that people actually use and want and love. And then there are some big companies that just exist because of a money printer, and they are completely outrageously overvalued. And so there's and those zombie companies will go to bust the same way as the fake art will go to bust. And I think that's my best way to think through what Bitcoin will actually do. And with real estate, it's interesting because a lot of people actually use real estate. Like only rich people, mostly only rich people use art as a store of value. But a lot of the middle class, a lot of also rich people, just not the poor, use real estate as a store of value. They get in this real estate, they get the 30-year mortgage, and they save all their life just to have this like one piece of real estate. I'm really curious because I have no attraction at all to buying real estate. Like I couldn't be more turned off of buying real estate than from anything else. I rather buy, if I have to buy something outside of Bitcoin, I'd rather buy great, profitable companies or something that is doing something in Bitcoin, or like AI startups or like whatever. Like I'm very turned off of real estate. Maybe down the road as an investment or as a consumer good for the family of building a family, all of that things. But how do you look actually of real estate and the implication that Bitcoin has on it? And all of that.
Yeah, it's so just my own story, I guess, to a degree. Like I said earlier, I was doing real estate for 10 years and, buying rental properties, trying to raise money, get apartment complexes, stuff like that. But you run into, there's time. What's really tough, and like Warren Buffett, who I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he does, but he's obviously a smart guy in some respects. And two things can be true, I guess. And so one of the things he always talked about was patience, right? The greatest investors of all time are patient. I mean, I think of like a Donald Trump reading The Art of the Deal. I think he waited like 20 years to get like Hudson Yards in New York or something like that. And like to put the deal together, like it fell apart the first time, then waited like 10 or 15 years and took a couple of years to put the deal together finally. And you think about the patience that takes. 20 years. I mean, people don't even have patience to like flip the channel, on YouTube and like, they can't even wait 5 seconds or, like for an ad or something like that. And you think about the difference, and that's what really does make the difference is the patience, long-term thinking, long-term planning. And I think the real estate, you realize there's a time and place for everything. And that's what's very hard for the average person, because we've been so sped up. We've become incentivized to be high time preference. That's what fiat does to you. So very short-term thinking, short attention spans, that you can't see the forest from the trees. You can't really understand what's happening. So like this cycle that we're in, we talked about civil unrest and things happening. Well, there's country risk, there's city risk, local municipal risk, there's county risk here in America, there's state or provincial risk. Like where are you? What jurisdiction are you in? Is it a good spot to buy in? Do you have good tenants? Are they good people? What kind of, mayor do you have, or, the leader in your town, or whatever it is? All these things are a risk to you. And that's the cycle we're in now. To me, it doesn't really behoove you to go buy a bunch of real estate, because who knows what kind of people you're going to have in there. I mean, God love everybody, but you don't know the mayor who's going to be in there next, or the leader. You just have no idea. So I've always kind of joked with everybody. We started getting out of all of our real estate a handful of years ago. And it's a time where you kind of take your chips off the table. And in the cycles, this is what I learned 15 years ago, even studying gold and silver, and every asset class has its cycles. I talked to Dr. Jeff Ross about this, 3 or 4 months ago. I mean, in 20 years from now, it won't make sense to invest in Bitcoin. Saving in Bitcoin and being the money is always going to be a thing, and that'll eventually become just money. But investing in Bitcoin right now, it's an investment, it's a money, it's a current, like it's all these things Bitcoin is. But eventually, a couple decades from now, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to invest in Bitcoin and pull my chips off the table and defund the system. Things will have already happened. Things will have changed, and you kind of miss that S curve. Well, you don't kind of, you do miss that S curve. You miss that explosive move. And that's what all asset classes do. Everything has done that over time. Gold and silver, they have these swings where, stocks and real estate and gold and silver and businesses, they all have their cycles, and a lot of them mirror each other, or they're inverted, and you kind of jump in at one asset class and out of the other, and etc. And we're just in one of those times in life where it's annoying to a lot of people. And I've had a lot of people say, well, like, well, I just, activity bias, right? Like they feel like they have to do something, whether they're really wealthy even, or they're not. Everyone has this activity bias of like, again, seeing Gary Vaynerchuk online or something like that. Again, Gary V is amazing or something, but like all these like hustle culture, grind culture, that's what inflation does to you. Like you have to like, kill yourself and get on the rat wheel in order to just get ahead in life. And I get it. I understand it. Again, we make content, you and I played high level hockey growing up, and it was always like a grind. You're always like getting after it every day. You get up and like you got your routine and do your thing to get better. But why are you doing those things? Right. And so where I'm going with all this is that there's a time and a place to get into real estate and do some of these things. I just don't believe that's the time right now. Like, are there ways to do it? And if you have a massive operation and all kinds of funding, then hey, by all means, and the mayor and the state governor that you're in, the province, like, sure, like, everyone's, but for the average person, the average guy working at, McDonald's, or the guy, working at, who knows, even a guy working at Credit Suisse, or, RBS or something like that, or, Fly Emirates. It's like the average guy working at these places, all you need to do is go to work, provide value for society, and save in Bitcoin. And then you get to defund the system, the corrupt system that you're in. And then eventually over time here, it's the best thing you can do. Then once the purchasing power has all transferred, because there's a transfer of wealth coming, the transfer of wealth is going to be massive. And it's already started, and it's going to be massive over the next decade or two. The people that could foresee what was coming, this transfer of wealth will come to the people that had foresight, generally the Bitcoiners, probably some hard money people too. Gold and silver will probably do well also. But these people, and then assets below that, stocks, people have that, but they'll just kind of keep along with the money printing or currency printing. And then the people that have that foresight will reshape the world eventually. And then 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever it is, you then, will look at each other and say, hey, Bitcoin as an investment, maybe it's only 15% a year or something like that. Well, you know what, if we go buy an apartment complex, or if we go buy a business, maybe it's making 25% a year or 35% a year or something like that. Then it makes sense to get back into another asset class, use your money to go buy another legacy asset at that point. So to me, I think that's kind of the cycle we're in, where it makes sense, because we need to defund the system. Bitcoin is the best investment. It's the really the only money. You can make an argument that's the only money humans have ever really truly had and discovered. So we have this perfect time and place. Just like if anyone's read the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, it's an unbelievable book. I reference it, I don't know, probably once a month over the last like 5 years. such a good book. And he talks about like, you can't go invent another internet right now. I mean, you could, but you're not going to compete against the internet, right? The Lindy effect, the network effects. Like, you're not going to do that. You can't go, hey, I'm going to go discover oil. Like, that's already gone. Like, if you weren't born in like whatever it was, 30 to 1841, you can't do it. Like, so he goes through and talks about all these different eras of society where if you were born in this 9-year window or 12-year window, you had the ability to be this guy, like the Rockefellers or Vanderbilts or Steve Jobs, something like that. But after that, sorry, like, that's how life works. Life isn't fair. So what is that chance? What is your Steve Jobs moment now? What is your Vanderbilt, Rockefeller moment now? How can you become that next class of people? Well, the people that were born, 1940 to, now to 2000 or whatever it is, like, you have that ability to just save in Bitcoin, the hardest money, the only money humans have ever had. And then you can become very wealthy over time with even a small fraction. You'll become very wealthy in the future decades. And then you get to reshape society. You get to go buy the assets, and that transfer of wealth from the legacy world that didn't know what was going on. And it's kind of like life cycles, right? Like, the strong will survive, the people who get it. And then the weak, their weak mind, they were felt entitled. Their mind got soft and atrophied because they didn't think they needed to do anything else. You get a lot of academics, and you get a lot of credentialists now, right? Like, their minds are very soft because they're not staying up on things. It's like the guy the other day that was like still doubling down, like, well, I got Bitcoin wrong 7 years ago, and I'm still not, I'm still sticking to it or something like that. It was like, okay, like, that's a perfect example of the more formal education you have, the less humility you have. You think you're God's gift to earth. You think you're so smart intellectually that your ego is so big that your humility can't rise to the occasion in order to understand, hey, facts have changed. Time changes. Things move. And now society's going a different direction. There's a better answer. And that's what I go back to earlier. Like, humility is the name of the game. And if you can't understand, and there's a book from 1970 called Future Shock, Alvin Toffler. And he talks about those that will shape the new world or be wealthy, in essence, paraphrasing, will be the ones who can learn, unlearn, and then relearn. And it's just about having this, I should say, like, your mind is soft. And so these people are soft, but their minds are hard. They're hardened. They aren't growing anymore. So I should rephrase how I was saying that. But that's the world we're in. Real estate, to me, it's an amazing thing if it's a certain person and a certain, resources, experience, stuff like that. For the average person, it makes no sense right now. Do it 10, 20, 30 years from now, get investments, trade your Bitcoin or whatever it is for these productive assets when it makes sense. But right now, the average person, all they have to do, because again, the last thing I'll say is I did this and it took lots of time. It took many, 5, 6, 7 people a month. We'd spend all kinds of fiat every month trying to look for properties, trying to do things and fighting other people, fighting BlackRock. Literally. I mean, we'd go into deals. You'd be fighting BlackRock. You'd be fighting Blackstone, like other people trying to buy up homes all across the country. And because, I mean, at the end of the day, could there be something nefarious? Maybe. But they're also looking for return as well. They're like, we have all this currency and like, we don't know what to do with it. So they're out, in the free market, buying bonds away from you and I, driving up the price of bonds. They're in the real estate market, buying up housing away from the average guy and gal trying to get their first home. So it's just this insidious problem that the asset premium, like I said earlier, needs to come out of these assets, flow into Bitcoin. And there will be a time and place for real estate to buy, your family home or whatever it is, buy some rental properties, buy some apartment complexes. But the time for me is Bitcoin now. And that's the time of the cycle we're in. It's very obvious to those who have been paying attention, but it's very hard though, because it feels like you are doing nothing, right? You feels like I'm just sitting here, like the wealth is being transferred to me and the price, nominal price keeps going up. But I doesn't feel like I'm doing much. But just know you are doing God's work. You are doing the greatest thing you could be doing, which is defunding these corrupt people all across the world who are in these ivory towers thinking they just get to run the world and to print it away from you, steal your time and energy, and put you on the rat wheel.
I love that. Man, that's amazing. And I want to show this to people because I think it's such an amazing example that economists that are wrong for over 7 years now, writing things like, like Bitcoin is more likely to go to $100 than to 100K. Professor at Harvard, someone that should be intellectually open to actually study this thing. And I want to show this just to people, just people understand like how massively he he's into that. He wrote that like just just a couple of days or weeks ago, like in August. And he wrote that article here in CNBC. It was published 2018. And he wrote, at that time was Bitcoin around like $8,000, I looked up. And so he wrote, when Bitcoin was at $8,000, Bitcoin is more likely to go to $100. Like that would be a massive, massive fall. It would basically be Bitcoin is worthless at that time. If Bitcoin goes back to $100, then it reaches 100K. Now, Bitcoin reached 100K, and his employer bought Bitcoin, over $100 million worth of Bitcoin.
Insane.
Not only his employer bought Bitcoin, so Harvard obviously slowly gets it. He's wrong for 7 years, and just as fun, his thing, since he said Bitcoin is more likely to go to $100 than $100,000, Bitcoin went up 1,217%, which is over $100,000. Yes, he bought it around $8,000, or he talked about it about $8,000, and this just shows you that they are aware of Bitcoins in 7 years. They are obviously smart enough to get Bitcoin. Like, he is not a stupid person. Like, he is smart enough to get it. He's too ignorant to get it. And this is where I say to people, pick your battles when it comes to orange pilling. Orange pill people that actually want to get educated, that actually are intellectually honest and open, and not someone that anyways just wants to prove a point. And even if Bitcoin is at 1 million, he's one guy that if Bitcoin is at 1 million and the Federal Reserve bought it, he will be like, oh, I did not anticipate that the Federal Reserve will buy it, and Bitcoin is still worthless, but the Federal Reserve buys it now. Like, oh yeah, you will just find this little straw that you like, oh yeah, I'm still right because I'm the Harvard professor that knows everything.
Insane. It's absolutely insane. Again, it's an IQ or EQ, it's the EQ test, right? It's a humility and ego test. That's all Bitcoin is. It's not, there's some of the smartest people in the world that grok Bitcoin. There's some of the least smartest of the world that grok Bitcoin. Doesn't matter. That's not, and that's the beauty of it. I don't think humans are put here on Earth, in my belief, that you have to be, excuse me, some 180 IQ person in order to get ahead in life. Like, if anyone believes that, then I mean, like, come on, like, what are we doing here? I don't think that that's, what it is. And again, like, you have to, figure things out in order to get ahead and, build shelter, Maslow's hierarchy needs or something to that effect. Right. But humans cooperate together. We want to see each other succeed. Truthfully, we're made good. All of us are made good. And do some people kind of stray off the path? Do we all stray off the path to a degree? Yeah, we do. And some more than others. But inherently we're all good. Otherwise you'd have 10 million Genghis Khans every single day, all day long. So that right there is confirmation that we all are all created good, because otherwise you would see that. You would see just mass chaos all the time, everywhere, every single day, and you don't. So anyway, that's I love you share that, because that's it's a great example of humility that is needed to understand Bitcoin, or otherwise you never will, and you will not be part of this wealth transfer going forward, guaranteed.
Yeah, and I just hope for him and that he gives it a second look, because I think I feel with people that are into this thing of like, oh, I want to prove my point, and they actually don't want to learn. And this is something that I also have a lot of empathy for people, because they have been trained and they are in the system so deeply. It's like, as you mentioned before, the fish doesn't recognize that he's wet. It's kind of this thing, and this is this honesty, because I do think that if I would do an IQ test, I would probably underperform most of my guests, and I would probably underperform even like most of my audience. I'm really not that smart, but one thing one thing that I do a lot is just being extremely curious, and that's why I like being on the other side of the mic, just like asking questions. And when I'm on another podcast, I got the feedback, oh, like you got so smart, and I'm like, no, like I just reiterate what my guest is saying. I'm just,
I got the smartest people in the world to tell me their thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
It's
yeah,
amazing.
I'm not smart. I'm just repeating what Jeff Booth, Michael Saylor, and all those great people have told me, and I'm like,
Yep.
oh yeah, that sounds really smart. And like, let's do that. But we're coming slowly to the end of the podcast, and it was great learning also from you. You're extremely smart, man. You've
Oh,
done some
thanks,
great
Robin.
work in there, and so that's why
Pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to the question that I ask each and every one of my new guests on the podcast. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Oh, well, I can juggle. That's always the talent that there's some secret talent, which I just found out my wife can also juggle. After 10 years of marriage, 15 years of knowing her, I didn't know she could juggle. And I just found that out in the last year. So,
How did you find it out so late?
honestly, like she is, God bless her heart. She was just always like, I don't know, like you always like say it first. And then like, I never want to like burst your bubble. And like, I was like, are you kidding me? And we're both pretty competitive. So, she played college sports as well. So I'm like, are you kidding me? I still gets me, but, it came up. I don't know how it came up. Like someone, I don't know. I don't know how it came up, but like I caught her almost like she was telling it to somebody else or something like that. And I was like, wait, what did you say? Oh my gosh. It was just wild. But I'm trying to think. Yeah. I mean, obviously I love your pod, Robin. I have my pod as well. I'm writing, some small books right now. Stuff like that I love writing. I think that's one of my big things. I really like writing. I like making content a lot. But writing, I really love just because it's, something that kind of, it can be just in print forever. And I can kind of do it whenever too, even obviously doing what we do, you're on some type of schedules, things of that nature. And it's really tough with just like I was telling you, my family with 4 kids and stuff like that at times. So, doing some writing, about, really the founding of America and just some of the just global history and Bitcoin, how it relates to Bitcoin, stuff like that. So I'm really excited about some of that because we have a lot of Bitcoin content out there that's like, hey, this is what Bitcoin is, or, hey, this is why it's so great or whatever. But I do think we need more content that's lighting the fires in that couple percent of people and understanding that we're not going to get 90 or 100% of people or 90 or 80% of people to do this. It's trying to light the fires of a handful of percent that are going to wake up and that are already there. Like they have, just like selling, right? Like if you're selling, you're not going to go try to convince, the Eskimo that he needs an igloo, like you're going to go, find something that he does need or a way, someone that, is in need of your services or something like that. Right. So, I'm trying to say that's not the right. Does an Eskimo need ice? You're selling ice to an Eskimo. So yeah, just that to me, I think is some of the content I think just is going to change over time in the Bitcoin space as well, just because of that. And I just think a lot about that of like, again, like we said, just the normal podcast thing, 10 years from now, we won't be doing this per se. Like it could be things like this. It could still be podcasting theoretically, but is it going to be about how Bitcoin is so great? No, probably not. It's going to be maybe more theoretical discussions, maybe more art-based discussions, right? Theory, philosophy, like things of that nature. I think things kind of will turn into that a little bit more over time, especially 10, 15 years from now when the younger generations kind of take over and they're really starting to learn and really like come into some of that. Because again, none of us were taught these things in school because school was so changed over the last, handful of decades, we didn't get to learn a lot of these beautiful things across the landscape. So that I think will be eye-opening for a lot of the younger generation, millennials on down, where it's like, whoa, I didn't know all these things existed. The art, the buildings around the world and money, just how it's been corrupted and just, the ways of that world. So anyway, I think that'll be it. I think that's where, again, it's trying to convince people or sell them emotionally on and tug at their heartstrings. And that's the kind of education that we're going to need going forward when it comes to Bitcoin, understanding that sound money and lighting fires in people. So, yeah. And then like I help Aladdin with Aladdin Flynn's amazing guy, Bitcoin trading cards, an incredible guy. He's doing some awesome things, just, very, very red pilled, very orange pilled, and buildings, a company that's, working with some people actually formerly from Pokemon, and that are, spreading awareness, red pill, orange pill education, with what he's doing, in a fun, format. So I've been helping him over the last handful of years when I can, and he's just crushing that. And like I said, doing some writing, doing my interviews when I can, here and there and growing that. And then, yeah, I think that's that's the big stuff in homeschooling our kids. That's the other thing too. Like, again, I think homeschooling and just, if you can, not everyone's in a position to do it. Obviously at this moment, took us a year or two to really dial it in, but just being with your children and kind of rebuilding society from the ground up. That's another thing that we just started doing the last year or two, and just really trying to focus in on the Bitcoin citadel and just like how live the way that we want to live and you want to see the future. And we see more and more people doing that. We have tons of family and friends and people that are around us that are starting to do that now, homeschool, gardening, all kinds of stuff. And obviously 2020 and really changed, I think, a lot of people's, again, we go back to the black swan, like the different things going on, that woke a lot of people up, obviously. So these things are going to happen. Embrace them, be there when people need you, be ready to help them, guide them, coax them, educate them when they need the shoulder to cry on, or education or whatever it is, because these things are going to happen, the good and the bad, and just we just need to be prepared and ready for when those opportunities arise to just be there for people. So.
I love that. And my takeaway is there's a lot of things to learn outside of Bitcoin from you. A lot of different things. Also, the 4 kids, I think it's a Bitcoiner thing, and you doing God's work of spreading more Bitcoiners into this world. So thank you for that. Also, we have an end routine in the podcast, as you might know, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question: what are the best AI tools and how do you leverage them?
That's a good question. I use ChatGPT a lot. I use all of them. I kind of intermix them. I play with them. The thing I kind of like doing is just like going to all the different ones, maybe, Perplexity, Bing, AI, or ChatGPT, a bunch of them, and Grok, and just seeing like the difference in the answers. I like to give like the different questions, or like the same question, I guess, and the different platforms and see what the different answers are. So I'll play with that sometimes, but yeah, I use it for all kinds of stuff. I was using it with my car the other day, and it was like, hey, what are these codes that were coming up in my car? And it gives you, ChatGPT is giving me these phenomenal answers. And you do have to be careful, obviously, what you're actually putting in there. You never put sensitive information in there or something like that, but you can be very generic with stuff and get really good answers. And again, the AIs will give you a lot of times what you want to hear to a degree, right? So like you do need to really get good at prompt engineering it, as Nolan Bowerly would say. And so the better you get at that, I think the more productive you can be. And it's definitely becoming something that I kind of just turn to just to kind of triangulate truth. I always think of that, like you can't just go to one source, and that, which kind of fits my mindset for years, which is like, you can't just triangulate, or you have to triangulate. You can't just go to one source and say, oh, hey, this is the answer. Like go to the AI, go to a couple, maybe see what they're all saying. What are the sources there? And it gives you quickly, I think that's one of the big things, it gives you so much quicker research ability to go find and triangulate truth and see what's actually going on across the spectrum. And then again, simple things like bookkeeping, like all these little things where it's like, if you can put in generic prompts, but like maybe the numbers are accurate or whatever, boy, does it like speed things up so much. So it is something that it's coming. It's the deflationary world we live in. It's coming for all of our jobs eventually, but it's a thing to embrace. That's why we need more Bitcoin education to have that deflation fall to the people instead of the people at the top. So it's definitely something to embrace.
Absolutely. And I've noticed ChatGPT often wants to butter me up instead of telling me the harsh truth that I have to do. It's like I noticed when I interact with like, oh yeah, you might butter me up here a little bit. And actually, if you ask it very hard, I was like, oh, is this actually true? Because I don't think this and that. And then it's like, oh yeah, you might be right here. Oh, got it. Like, great question, Robin. Actually, I love interacting with AI. But I think the thing that I till now am most annoyed with it, buttering me up with questions that I kind of want to hear. So you have prompt engineering is a real thing at this point. But yeah, thank you so much, Brandon, for being on. It was such a great talk. We talked almost about everything now, from Bitcoin, American Revolution, AI tools, and the Mona Lisa and family. There was a lot in there. So thank you so much for that. Before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
I think it's just Brandon_Gentile. So just my name, really on every platform. So YouTube, obviously our podcast comments there, and my Twitter. I think Nostr is the same thing as well. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about Spotify. I'm trying to think. It's basically all just Brandon_Gentile. So just my first and last name. I think those are the handles everywhere. So yeah, you can find me there. I'm pretty active on Twitter, and not as much as I would like to be, just really, conversing with everyone all the time. But again, like my family life is my first priority. So that's the thing that I used to be much more active a couple of years ago on everything, and Nostr and Twitter and stuff like that. But definitely, there once a day and check things out and see what's going on, try to answer stuff. Obviously, YouTube, you put out, 1 or 2 videos a week. Yeah, so there's, love to, chat, DM me, comment on the video or whatever. I love it all. So I look forward to it. And thanks so much, Robin, for having me on. It was an absolute blast, an honor.
Of course. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.